How is it time to get up already? I'm not getting up. I have to get up. I have to go to work. I don't want to go to work. I hate work. I could call off, but that means actually picking up the phone and talking to someone. It's easier if I just don't show up. But then they'll call, and that'll make me anxious because I'll have to ignore it because I didn't go to work and I have no logical reason why I didn't go to work, and I can't lose another job because I didn't show up. I can't fuck this up. Fuck. I guess I'll just go to work. Maybe today's the day I kill myself. I can't do that to my family. Besides, what if I try and don't die? I hate my life. Why am I here? Why is life so painful?
Part 1. Capitalist Realism. In 1992, following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Francis Fukuyama declared the end of history. He claimed we had reached the endpoint of mankind's ideological evolution and the universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government. Quite a claim. It has now been over a generation since the fall of the Berlin Wall, meaning that most kids today, in fact, most adults today, have no idea what it even means to live in a world with an option other than capitalism. 30 years ago, the concern was that neoliberal logic was beginning to seep into the consciousness of unwitting spectators. But now, capitalist logic is all there is. It's not even questioned anymore. Mark Fisher calls this capitalist realism, the ambient, all-pervasive atmosphere where it's just sort of implied that capitalism is all there is. It conditions how we view the world, how we work, our social relations, even our thoughts and behaviors. So what I want to discuss today is the way capitalist realism informs our conversations and experiences of mental health. Mexi and I actually talked about this on her podcast, The Vegan Vanguard, last summer. So if you like this video and want to hear more, you can check that out. I'll leave the link in the description below, along with a bunch of other resources on the topic. So when it comes to capitalist realism and mental health, I think a useful framework for understanding this is Lacan's concept of the real versus reality. The real being that which is objectively real or true, and reality being that which presents itself as real or true. Reality is pure ideology, but acts as if it is non-ideological, and in turn actually ends up covering up and suppressing what is truly real. So when it comes to mental health, we are taught to believe that mental illness is this natural fact of life, purely a chemical, biological imbalance in the brain which requires a chemical solution. This is reality in Lacan's analysis. What is missing, and in fact being actively covered up, is the very real social, political, and economic causes which contribute to mental illness, and which always seem to be missing from the equation.
It goes without saying that all mental illnesses are neurologically instantaneous, but this says nothing about their causation. If it is true, for instance, that depression is constituted by low serotonin levels, what still needs to be explained is why particular individuals have low serotonin. This requires a social and political explanation, and the task of repoliticizing mental illness is an urgent one if the left wants to challenge capitalist realism.
The way mental illness is currently framed places responsibility solely on the individual. The same thing goes for addiction. It says you, the individual, are the problem. You are sick. you own this illness, you own this addiction, right? Framing it in this way perpetuates capital's crusade towards individualism, separation, and atomization, and provides the perfect landscape for big pharma to peddle its pills as the magic cure to fix all these sick people. The global depression drug market is a $15 billion industry, and the global opioid market is expected to reach $42 billion by 2021. By privatizing and depoliticizing stress in this way, we need never consider that maybe the world in which we live in is the problem. The solution to the larger mental health and addiction epidemic then becomes reduced to public awareness campaigns and working towards destigmatization, both of which serve the function of funneling people straight into individualized medicine and therapy. Now, let me make this clear. I'm not saying that medicine or therapy are bad. I know firsthand that these things can be real lifesavers and serve a very real purpose. What I am saying, though, is that this can't be the only solution. We need to address the root cause of mental illness instead of just dealing with symptoms. And we need to consider the broader structural issues in place, which are causing perfectly sane people to become insane. In other words, we need to make mental health political. I was 14 when I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I went to a doctor who told me I had a chemical imbalance and prescribed me Prozac. I then became more suicidal than I had ever been before. I was taken off Prozac and put on Lexapro. It helped.
Now, I got cured by accident. All I used to want was the vagina. Couldn't even think about the penis without getting sick to my stomach. Then, one day, the doctor said I had chemical imbalance in my brain. I started taking Paxil for it. Well, in taking my medicine, not only did I get undepressed, but I slowly started wanting the penis. In fact, I hardly even eat vagina at all now. This was a miracle of Jesus.
I then became more suicidal than I had ever been before. I was taken off Prozac and put on Lexapro. It helped. A couple months later, it stopped helping. My dose was increased. Again, it worked and then stopped. Again, my dose was increased. I started self-medicating, I developed an eating disorder, I started cutting, and I became a drug addict. I tried everything I could think of to numb the pain, to stop the thoughts that were telling me I'm not good enough, and I couldn't understand why the pain wasn't going away.
Part 2. The Broken Brain.
In 1972, a man named David Rosenhan sent a bunch of his graduate students into psychiatric hospitals all over the United States, instructing them to tell the staff they heard the word thud in their heads. And that's it. Every single one was falsely diagnosed with a mental illness of either bipolar disorder or schizophrenia and hospitalized. And they were only released after admitting to their diagnosis, agreeing to take the prescribed antipsychotic medication, and pretending to get better. This was just one in a long series of embarrassments faced by the psychiatric industry at the time, casting doubt on the ability of psychiatrists to distinguish individuals with mental disorders from those without. At the same time, neoliberal ideology propagating individualism, rational thinking, and personal responsibility began to take hold. And both of these served as the impetus for a new model of mental health, one based on an objective checklist of symptoms called the third edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Whereas before,
Who do you think of when you hear the term alt-right? Is it her? Or her? How about her? Probably not.
When most people hear the term alt-right, they probably imagine a bunch of men, right? Perhaps neo-Nazis with fashy haircuts, maybe images of prominent alt-right figures like Richard Spencer, Steve Bannon, or former Breitbart sweetheart Milo Yiannopoulos. Much has been said and written about the men of the white nationalist movement called the alt-right, as well as the online manosphere, including incels, pickup artists, and men going their own way, which